Mr. Speaker, 4,000 Manitoba essential workers will be fully vaccinated months earlier than the Prime Minister planned, thanks to the kindness and generosity of the North Dakota people. Manitoba truckers will receive both recommended doses, 2 doses within a short 6-week period, while transporting goods to the United States. Full credit to Manitoba's Premier for his visionary leadership on this. But will the Prime Minister admit it is in fact his vaccine shortages that caused the third wave of the pandemic and encouraged multiple premiers to go cap in hand to the Governor of North Dakota?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I think, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives would do well to pay a little more attention to science rather than grounding everything in their partisan attacks. But I'd like to remind the honourable member that we've worked every step of the way with the provinces and territories through this pandemic, including on procuring and supplying them with vaccines. Provinces are free to make their own decisions on who should be prioritised for vaccination. We're happy to see the province of Manitoba is making essential workers like truckers a priority. And as I've said many times, every Canadian who wants to will be fully vaccinated by September.
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister would do well to remember is the third wave is raging in Canada, and Canadians are tired of waiting for vaccines. We're seeing dual citizens in Ontario crossing the U.S. border to get vaccinated. Many Canadians know snowbirds who have done the same. Everyone but the Prime Minister can see the U.S. and the U.K.'s success has allowed them to begin reopening, and yet Canada has resorted to taking vaccines from developing nations, an international embarrassment. Canadians deserve far better than this Prime Minister's mediocrity, and will he admit his failures to deliver enough vaccines in January and February led to the third wave of the pandemic in Canada?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, instead of talking down the hardworking Canadians across the country in provinces, territories and in the federal government who've been working unbelievably hard to get people vaccinated, they should respect and reflect on the fact that Canada is now third in the G20 in terms of people who've been vaccinated. In terms of the G7, we're also third, behind the US and the UK indeed, but ahead of many of our European counterparts. We will continue to do even better. We will continue to bring in even more vaccines because we know that vaccination and science is the way through this pandemic.
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, this is serious. People are getting sicker and they're dying. Provinces are heading back into the third wave of the pandemic lockdowns. ICUs are overwhelmed. Field hospitals are being built in Ontario. A Vancouver nurse is asking for prayers because the situation is worse than she's ever seen. She's seeing people as young as 20 years old in her ICU, Mr. Speaker, and Canadians are frustrated, they are tired, and it's costing more Canadian lives and livelihoods. This is the COVID-19 legacy of this Prime Minister. Will he show humility for once and acknowledge that it is his failures to get vaccines to Canada adequately in January and February that led to the third wave of the pandemic and is costing Canadian lives?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on this we can agree. Canadians are tired of this COVID pandemic. People are frustrated about the restrictions that continue. We need to get through this as quickly and as best as possible, and that is why we are working day and night to bring in even more vaccine doses so we can end with this pandemic. In the meantime, we're going to need to continue to follow local public health guidelines, and we actually, as a federal government, brought in measures so that premiers across the country could make the tough decisions around closing down various sectors of the economy, knowing that the federal government was there to support workers, to support small businesses, to have Canadians' backs.